go live. So here we go. Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. I'd like to welcome to the Audio Programmer Meetup. My name is Josh, and I'm here with our two guests, Nick Culbertson and Prashant Mishra. How's everybody doing today?
Oh, see, I was waiting for the audience to
No, I was
answer.
waiting for you.
That's not good. Okay. I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. I've been watching the Audio Programmer for a while now. I got into the Discord for Audio Programmer earlier this year when I was getting into audio development. So this is nice for me because I've been watching all the talks, learning a bunch of stuff, and now hopefully I'll be giving some of that back.
Awesome. How are things going, Prashant?
Yeah, same here. Very excited to be on this platform today. I think for most of us, we started learning audio programming by watching this channel and being able to be present here and share some of the knowledge. I think it's a great moment.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to have you both here. So my co-host, Rachel Locke, is taking a little bit of time off at the moment. So it's just myself hosting today. So before we get started, just wanted to let you know about our sponsors, Focusrite and Sonics. They're the sponsors of the Audio Programmer Meetup, and without them, this meetup would not be possible. So thank you to Focusrite and Sonics. Also wanted to let you know very quickly about a couple really exciting things that are happening at the moment. So if I just share my screen, I will share this one. So one of the first things is that, in case you weren't already aware, we've started off an audio programmer wiki. So as many of you know, we have a Discord where people are sharing information. And one of the things that we found is that sometimes there are common questions that arise, and so we just wanted a place that resided online that allowed people to be able to share information and share some of their insights into audio programming. And so we created this wiki, and I'd like to thank especially Sudara and Nico Pellerin and Evan B for helping out with setting up the wiki. And if you're knowledgeable in audio development and you have some insights that you'd like to share, this would be a fantastic place where I think it would be a great resource for other people that are looking to get into audio programming. So you can join us there on wiki.theaudioprogrammer.com. And yeah, hope to see you there. There are already some interesting articles, and please feel free to share your insights. Also, we have quite a few jobs. So for anybody who doesn't know, the Audio Programmer also has a contracting and recruitment agency where we connect with some of the best audio programming companies in the world, and we help them connect with audio developers. So you can find out some of the jobs that we have available on the audioprogrammer.com/recruitment. And also next month, I hope that some of you are coming out to London to join us for the Audio Developer Conference. So the Audio Developer Conference has been very influential on my career and on many others as well. The conference is both in person in London and also online. There's a day of workshops on the 14th, and then there are conference days on the 15th and 16th. So I hope that to see some of you either virtually or in person at the Audio Developer Conference. To find out more information and to get your tickets, you can go to audio.dev. And with that, we can just go ahead and start getting into our talks. So the first talk that we're going to have is with our guest, Prashant Mishra. So Prashant has worked as an audio director for educational games and videos with the educational tech brand Baiju's in collaboration with Disney to create IP-specific sonic experiences covering movies such as Frozen, Cars, Toy Story, Lion King, and more. He is now building audio products and with companies like Soundly, and hosts games, spatial, and interactive audio training sessions. And what are you going to be talking about today, Prashant?
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. Hi, everyone. So today I'll be covering a little bit about ideating product. How can we approach a problem, and then how can we create solutions uh, uh, in a way that actually helps out users and also brings a lot of teams together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, and specifically with voice and text syncing, right? So in animation, um, I'll let you describe the problem space, but you have to sync how when the word is said and how it actually displays on the screen. So this is a common problem space for video games and animation, right?
yeah, exactly. Joshua, if you allow me, I'll take it to my through my presentation so
Yes.
everybody gets to see.
Yes. Please go for it.
Awesome. All right, hi everyone again. Honored to be sharing the screen with Joshua and Nick. I mean, it's like we learn a lot from different resources, and one of the resources has been AudioKit and the audio programmer community. So glad to be here and presenting this today. So I'll just quickly share my screen so all of you can actually see the presentation that I've prepared, and I hope it's visible now.
Yep. You're all good.
Awesome. So today's session is basically about voice and text sync. And this is basically we'll be talking about a specific use case, but the idea is to talk about the approach itself. Like what happens when you want to start into creating audio products. It can be plugins, it can be small applications, it can be tools that are going to enhance the workflow that you have in your workplace. So we'll get to that. So it's also about automating animation, which is one of the use case that we'll be discussing today. Uh, so just to give some more context about the audience and what you can expect from this session. So if you are a beginner in audio programming or just a programming in general, this session would basically give you that nudge to take your first step, to not be afraid of the technicalities and all the things that you might be assuming, and just go for it. Like just go for your first line of code. If you're already a coder who is building audio applications and writing code for products, this session will help you understand how to approach it with a product mindset. Like a lot of times what happens is when we are writing code, right? As a developer, we get too much involved into the nitty-gritties of the code itself. Like what is that algorithm doing? Is it working out as per the CPU usage and the RAM that it's consuming and all that? So how do we make sure that we are also keeping in mind the end use case of the product when we are building it? And if you're already an advanced programmer, there are not there are no tips as such, but it's more of a starting point of discussion, which is about how can we plan a product that involves creative collaboration with different departments, like outside the audio domain. So this is basically the whole context of what and who this session is for. Before I take it forward, a little bit about me. So this is my picture that was taken back in 2015. And I have this website where I post most of the information that I work on. So it's prashantmishra.xyz if you want to check it out. So I've been working as an audio director with a tech company in India called Byju's. And one of the latest project was about our collaboration with Disney, where I was working on interactive games and videos for kids for the K3 domain that covered a lot of IPs. And I'm also a Vice certified instructor, and I'm helping anybody who wants to get into the game audio domain or interactive audio domain just to learn and take their first steps. At the same time, I kind of am inclined towards building audio products that can simplify like workflows. And this specific tool that we will discuss in this session is an example of that. And I'm also proud of having done a few proof of concepts for spatial audio for VR. When on YouTube, I think a couple of years back, where the audio actually moves depending on your device. So there are a lot of 360 videos on YouTube, but they more often they just have the stereo audio. And I wanted to explore a way that you can get a game kind of feel where when you move your device, the audio kind of moves along. So that's one of the projects that I did, and I'm mentioning it here so that in case you are somebody who's also exploring this domain, I'm open to collaborations. And my most recent project that was launched a couple of months ago was the integration between Soundly and Wise. So I worked with the amazing team at Soundly to create uh, a way for sounds to go from Soundly into Wise, and it's a two-way connect where you can also recall sounds back in Soundly if you want to do some changes. So that's about me. Let's quickly see what we are going to build today. Like what specifically am I referring to when I say creative collaboration or voice and text sync. So I just play out a video here. And this is also kind of a reintroduction to this whole session. Hi, welcome to the Audio Programmer session. Let's help everyone build amazing products. All right, so I hope the audio was audible from my screen.
Yep, all good.
Awesome. So if you notice in this video, as and when the voice is spoken, when the voiceover is played, which is my voice, the text shows up on the screen in sync. Now, what do you think would be an approach to do this kind of animation? I'll just say what I think a lot of people would be thinking, which is you would have somebody who will write a script. That script would then go to a voice artist. The artist would then record the voiceover. It would come back to the audio department. Audio department would probably select the best takes and hand it over to the animator. Now, this can be an animator for movies or technical animators for games who might be using Unity or Unreal or After Effects or whichever application they are using. But the process from animator's point of view would be to then take all the text that is written by the writer, either type it into their application or copy paste. At the same time, import the audio that they receive from the audio department and then do the laborious work of syncing everything word by word. Now, this is kind of more of a hectic work than a creative work. So the idea was, can we automate this? Can we find a way to speed this process? And over the course of this session, I'll explain to you why and from everyone's point of view. So let me get back to the presentation here. All right. So what we decided is, if say we have to make an animation like this, what are the different departments who are involved? So the first thing was to understand everybody's point of view. We would have writers and editors who would write the scripts. We would have voice editors who basically edit the audio that we get from the voice artist. There would be animators, and there would be game developers if at all the animators are working in Unity and Unreal. Now let's understand their pain points. Like, why are we even making this? Like, what's the problem that we are trying to solve? And the most important thing that happens for the writers is they don't have the control on text. And I'll explain to you in a small way. So say you are a writer and you have written a dialogue which has to appear on the screen. The animator is either copy pasting it from the document that you might have provided, or they might be typing it manually. In both of these instances, there are chances of error. If while copy pasting they missed out a line or an exclamation point, it can change the whole context of the session often, right? If they are doing a typo, then when the final animation is done, the content or the writer will have to see that animation or play that game and then realize, oh, there was a spelling mistake. Now we'll have to correct it. And that's a whole lengthy process of doing all those changes. There are render times involved. There are a lot of builds that has to be created if it's a game. Now let's come to another point of view. Let's consider the point of view of a voice editor. Now we all know that in audio applications such as RX or whatever DAW you're using, audio department has much more control on zooming into the audio layer. On the other hand, the video department is kind of constrained by their frame rate. So if you have a video that is being worked on at say 25 frames per second, the maximum that you can zoom in a video editing application would be 1/25th of a second. But if you are working in an audio application and you're working at a sample rate of 48,000 samples per second, you have the option to zoom in at 1/48,000 of a second, which is much more control, much more clarity. So for the voice editors, they can verify a sync better. They have much more control in terms of millisecond values. From an animator's point of view, the whole process of doing this word by word sync and all that is a very repetitive task. What if there is a way that can be automated so that the animator can actually focus on the creative bits? What's the color of the animation? Like, can we add some nice glittery particles over that? So they can focus on that instead of having to listen to every word and do that. Other problem that animators would face is the playback. Now we all know in audio applications, you press spacebar, and as long as your CPU supports the plugin chain that you have kept and your DAW does not crash, you will be able to have instantaneous playback. But when it comes to video applications, it takes a bit of time. It has to either create a preview of the render and then play it back, or it's a hassle. Now imagine that you have to wait to press the spacebar or the play button on your software, and then the work that you're doing is actually listening to the sync between an animation and a voice. So all in all, it's much easier work task for an audio application person versus an animator. Same thing goes for the game developers. The game developers would want a way to simplify the integration. And the fact is, if you're working on a small game, right, the video that I just played has 2 sentences. So you might be wondering, why do we automate? We just have 2 sentences, right? But games have thousands of lines of dialogues. Imagine if there is a game which is kind of educational and it wants the reader to read along while the voiceover is being spoken, and they need this highlight and animation to work. It would be a massive amount of work for all the animators to manually sync it. So this is basically the problem that we are trying to solve. And I think let's take a step back before we jump into the code. This is actually the essence of building any product, right? Whenever we are writing code, we know what we want to create. Sometimes the problem is trivial. So for example, we might be just finding a way how to access a specific folder in our DAW. In the specific folder that is being used by a particular DAW. Or the challenge can be bigger. For example, how do I create a whole synth or a whole effects plugin itself? So based on the problem, the solution comes in. A lot of times what happens is, as a developer, we tend to think of the problems that are specific to us. For example, in this case, an audio department person thinking about their point of view of selecting the best take and making sure the sync is accurate. That approach can work on a small scale, but when it comes to collaborative projects where you want a lot of people to be interdependent to each other, it's also important to take everyone's point of view. And let's see the solution for this. Now, this is basically the solution that I had worked on with a lot of developers, writers, game designers, and everyone. And I'll just summarize this in a way. Now we have a text, which is basically the script. This text is sent to the voice artist. The audio is recorded. The audio department basically listens to the audio and takes the text and syncs it using the tool that I'll show you in some time. And once that is done, it basically goes to everyone. So let me just show it to you this in action so it makes more sense. So let's say this was our script, right? Where it says, hi, welcome to the audio programmer session. Let's help everyone build amazing products. Now I have this audio recorded beforehand before the session. So I'll just play it for you. And if you notice in this RX session, there are no markers. So basically the text and the voice has not synced yet. So let me just play it back for you quickly. Hi, welcome to the audio programmer session. Let's help everyone build amazing products. Right. Now let me run the program that we have written, which basically is written in Python it asks us for an input folder. The input folder just needs to have two assets. One is the audio file and the other is the text file. The text file is basically the one which has the script in it. And if you just select the input folder and click choose, it should basically run in the background and create a few output files which will have some magic in it. So if I import this file now here, you can see this has all of those words synchronized to each audio bits. So I'll just play the whole audio one more time and then I'll play the few bits. Hi, welcome to the audio programmer session. Let's help everyone build amazing products. So now if I click on the word welcome programmer session, everyone products. Yeah. So basically what this code has done is it has gone through the audio file, it has gone through the text file, and it has mapped. This is basically called force text alignment. And this is basically what this tool is providing us, a way to give you the starting and ending points of each word automatically. And I think it hardly took maybe a second. Now imagine the same work to be done by an animator in their software, where they are typing the word or they're typing the whole sentence. They're deciding the first part of the starting part of the sentence, the ending part of the sentence, and then animating it. And also if they're using the whole sentence as the reference point, the sync will not be accurate because a lot of times we take pauses between words within a sentence, and those flexibilities won't be possible in an animation software. And all of that is possible here. Now, once this file is created, it's basically an RX compatible file, which can then be converted into an After Effects or a Unity compatible file, and it can be used for syncing animation. So let me go back to that graph. In our case, what has happened is we have the text file, all the sync and all is done. We get an RX compatible marker, which basically can be like manually verified just in case it's not 100% accurate. And then that file along with the audio can be sent to the After Effects as well as Unity applications. Now on their end, they will need a way to basically convert this specific text file into After Effects or Unity compatible version, which I'll show in a bit. But let me just quickly show you how this integration works in itself. So basically what happens is the code runs on a Python library which is called NES. So you can actually access it from this website called readbeyond.it/NES. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. But what this library basically does is it does force text alignment. And that's the beauty of using libraries. So what happens is when we are starting out to code, we sometimes think, okay, should I just do something which is very algorithmic? Say, for example, if you're working on DSP, you would either look for math functions that can give you that kind of variation in your audio. And the approach is always in that format. But what happens is if you explore a bit, you might actually end up finding libraries that already have a lot of research done in the background by a lot of people, and they have made a simplified version which is possible to just use for application. Which brings me to an interesting topic. Machine learning, AI, has two dimensions. One is the research bit, one is the application bit. A lot of times, most of the people who are just starting out or even intermediate coders don't opt for these formats because they get confused between these two approaches. For an example, let me just play back an audio inside of RX. And I'll, Joshua and Nick, if you guys can help me, I'll just play the sound and you can just let me know what you hear. And then I'll do some changes and then you can just say it again, what you can listen here. All right, so I'll just play the audio once. Shimmer.
So I hear sh and shimmer.
Yep, exactly. Uh, Let me play another audio, which is silence.
Silence.
Yep. So these are two words in which the starting sound is what is different. The shimmer sound starts with the sh sound, the sh sound, and the silence word starts with the s sound. Now, if I just keep the frequency view here, you'll be able to see and observe a difference. The SH sound actually has a lot of frequency content in this frequency range, which is around 1K to somewhere around, say, 6K or something. But the S sound in silence has the higher frequency range. So this is an observation. Now, what if I try and replicate that the structure of this S sound inside of the word shimmer? Let's try it out. So let's just take the frequency which is in the lower range, which is in the 1K range, and just reduce it a bit. And let's listen to this word again. Shimmer. Are you noticing that it has changed from shimmer to simmer?
Yes, simmer.
Yeah. So this is basically the understanding of audio, understanding of frequencies. Now, when you are getting into machine learning and AI or any kind of audio programming, this could be one of the fields that you are interested in, where the developers want to actually break down audio, how the waveform is built, how the frequency is built, their relationship between each other, and then do research in that domain. And there are also a different category of programmers who would want to utilize this to build something. Now, the NES tool has already done all of this research, and the output that they provide allows us to use just one function and it will do the mapping for us. So, without getting into building something from scratch that requires you to study all this or understand all of these nitty gritties from a research point of view, we can also approach directly the product point of view. So, the gist of the whole discussion here is that all in all, as long as we focus on the problem statement, as long as we have clarity on what we want to build, what we are trying to solve, it becomes much easier for us to look out for resources that will help us solve that rather than worrying about doing it from scratch. And which is why the whole audio community comes into picture. There are a lot of frameworks that actually allow you to do this. And as an example, let me show you exactly how the code that I have written along with another developer friend of mine. And let me just show you what exactly the function is. So basically it has a very basic UI just so that whoever is using the application does not have to go into the terminal and write some functions and command and all that. So the process function is what basically gets run. And if you see inside the process function, it basically runs something called batch sync, and inside batch sync it has another function which creates the text file grid, and all in all it comes to this specific section, which is the NES tools. Now, as per the documentation on NES's website, what they have suggested is as long as we provide two input values to this framework, which is the audio file and the text file, and the text file needs to be in a specific format, and we let it know what language it is and some of the other information, which is what is mentioned here. Is it a plain text? What is the language? It's currently mentioned as English. So as long as we provide this information, all we have to do is just run this function called execute task dot execute, and this function will do the work for us. Now the output that it will give to us will not be compatible with RX. Obviously they have not written it specifically for a product, in which case we get to the next topic, which is understanding the markers. So basically what happens is if we are trying to solve a problem that involves different domains, we'll definitely want to do some conversions. So for example, in this specific scenario, we are starting out with a framework, a Python framework that is taking input as audio and TXT files, and it is providing us an output in some specific format. But we want to make sure that that output is usable for us. If it is not going to get imported into RX or into any other audio application, the audio department cannot do any sync. Now the file that the audio department provides, if that does not enter into After Effects, or if it is not compatible with Unity, again, the whole thing breaks. This is where the kind of hack thing works out. So when I was studying the markers for this specific project, I realized that RX has a specific format. It basically generates a TXT file, which has tab-based format, and it has a header. RX10 also has the word lane, the new feature that has come in. Pro Tools basically again exports a TXT file, but it has a specific structure which has this keyword called markers listing, which we can make use of and then smartly do the conversions. I'll show the code in a bit. Say Cubase, Nuendo, and Reaper tend to export the CSV file, and Studio One has also recently provided lyric support in their latest version. Now, this information is useful when we want to make the output from the Python code compatible with our software. So for this, if you see as an example, this is the marker file that basically is exported from Pro Tools. It has this format. It has the markers listing in the start. It mentions the time reference where at which sample the marker is added. And if we have to convert this Pro Tools markers into an RX compatible marker, this is how it looks. So the RX markers format starts with marker file, version, time format, just the 2 lines in the header. And then it right away starts with the actual information, the marker name, the time duration at which it starts, and any information that we had written. So just to clarify, if you see here, it's written as this is a marker comment, and the Pro Tools file also has the same information here in the comments column. This is a marker comment. The idea is, as long as we understand the problem statement, we can figure out everything, all the other bits and pieces in between. If our aim is to make sure that we sync audio and text and make the result accessible for the audio department, for the game developer teams, for the animation teams, we'll have clarity on that aspect. And that's how we'll approach the code. That's how we'll decide what features we want to add into the code and what is too much to worry about. So this is basically a little bit of overview of how this code works. Now, there are multiple use cases of this. One would be games that needs highlights in sync with the dialogue. Any read-along games, there are a lot of applications coming in. Any podcasts that also kind of want to teach students, like the younger students, to learn how to read and how to speak and all that. So a lot of use cases are there for this. Now, before we actually get into the conclusion, let me just summarize the whole thing. Anytime when we build a product, anytime when we have to solve a problem, understanding the problem can often help us define what we want to create. For example, if we are starting out and writing code, most of the times we go so deep into it that we spend a lot of time in bug fixes or CPU resources and all that. But having a clear picture of what we want to achieve can actually help us involve different departments. So anybody who is starting out, I would recommend look out for resources that will help you have a head start. There are libraries available that already have a research done, and you can just use that to solve a problem. If you are an intermediate coder and you are just writing code for a specific algorithm or something, take a step back and see how that plugin or how that application will be used by the user. A lot of time, for example, what happens is we create an application which has too many functionalities and it looks cool to us. We feel proud because we were able to achieve that kind of stability into the app along with all the functionalities. But from a user's point of view, if they're not able to use it in their music creation or their sound design work, it probably needs some iterations. And the third thing, which I think is crucial for the whole industry, is creating applications by involving different departments. So if you're working in a film, we often hear the audio department saying, we were involved only towards the deadline, or we did not get the time to work on this file. And I have heard this from even the most experienced people in the industry. And maybe one way this could be solved, if there are audio applications that are made by keeping audio at the center, but that involves everybody's input. So in this use case that I just talked about, the voice and text sync application that I just talked about, the TXT file actually comes from the writer. It gives the writer the control on the final text that will show up in the video. How? Because there is no copy paste or typing work involved at all. The code takes the text file that came from the writer, automatically syncs it, and that is what gets shown into the final video or in the final game. The audio department has their own control because they were able to do the manual sync and verify that the sync is accurate. The animator is happy because they can finally have the time to focus on the creative bits. And the same goes for the game developer. One small tool, all it does is use a very easy to access framework, which is existing for years now. It's not a new thing. Whatever basically I've shown in this presentation is not new. It already exists. It was just the approach that allowed us to make sure that different departments come together and work in a seamless format. And while doing so, everybody got and built empathy towards each other. The audio department saw the pain that the animation team goes through. The writers understood how sync happens, how a voice take selection works out. They understood how sure sound and the sound actually is the same thing. It's just a little bit of movement of frequencies. And all of it just bridges the whole production together. And that is what my aim has been with this session. It's not about the very basic code that I showcased here. It's more about how do we approach with a mindset of involving and be inclusive of all departments. And in short, we always need to create an application or a function which is a problem solver that takes all the parameters that it requires, does some things, and provides the result. As long as we have clarity on what those results are, in this case, make the process of animating text in sync with voice a little less painful. As long as we have that clarity, we will immediately understand what the parameters are. And we'll then be able to understand what is that do something bit. And that's when the research starts. Is there a framework that can sync it for us? Oh yes, let's use it. So that's the approach that I hope that you found some insights into it. And I feel that there is a need to embrace new technologies and build creative and collaborative solutions out of it. It has been years when the audio departments, the video tools, they all work in isolation. We know if it's After Effects, it's just video. If it is Pro Tools, it's just audio. So I think there is a time where there can be some bridging applications made that will sync these two. And because the developers have kind of created a master plan that forces all the departments to communicate, it can basically change the way the industry works by keeping the final thing at the center. And before I wrap, I'll just give a food for thought. And this is for people who are a little bit skeptical about this specific thing, like for example, forced text alignment or machine learning or AI, who might be thinking that, okay, this is going to reduce labor. So is it going to take over human beings? There are different opinions on that. So just a food for thought. When analog gear started showing up, before then, the music did not have arpeggiators, right? There were no fast running arpeggiator going on in music. Because there were analog synthesizers created that had those switches and those electricity paths, it was possible. And that's how we know bands like Daft Punk and a lot of artists showed up. Same thing happened when the digital audio came into picture. There was a lot of backlash between the analog sound lovers and the digital haters. And there was a mixed view of acceptance of the digital domain. And there were valid points given that digital audio does not sound as good as analog, and it was true back then. And the reasons were the processing power of the CPU was not good enough. But over the years, the digital audio has provided much more jobs, provided much more work that even allows a kid who is probably just starting out in college to use their laptop and make hit songs, which was not possible if they had to rely on a label to provide them the funds to go to a studio which has analog gear. And I think the same also happens with machine learning, with tools like Force Text Sync. They are here to assist us, and it's up to us how we want to utilize them to create whatever we want to create. So, the main food for thought that I gave this whole speech for is the form factor of a technology often decides what the artists create. And with that, I would say thank you.
Thank you very much, Prashant. That was a very well-informed talk and a lot of fun. So I had a question. One question that I had was that it sounds like this is one approach of a series of possible approaches to this type of problem. And I'm wondering if you've seen, when you propose this type of approach, if you've seen a lot of people, the response from people feeling like this makes sense, or have you seen opposition to this type of approach? And if so, why?
Okay, so I think in this specific application, there was a little bit of backlash in terms of if it is possible, like because it was not done before, especially in the use case that I was implementing it in. So there was a little bit of backlash in terms of that. But everybody who was involved in the process, right? The writers, the game developers, and the animators, they were kind of on board with it because they understood the value it brings. So it was less of friction and more of like acceptance.
And I noticed that in your animation, that the animation itself was per word. And I was wondering, how much more difficult or challenging do you find it to synchronize actual syllables in the words rather than just the words themselves?
I think often like what happens when we read is that we see the words as images. Like that's why when a kid is starting to learn, they kind of go letter by letter, Letter, and then they say letter. But for adults, we are able to see it as an image and we immediately know what it sounds. So, from a reading point of view and from a user experience point of view, uh, syllable level sync, I did not feel it was relevant. But I'm pretty sure, like with the right tools, it would be possible that if it is SH, we are able to just sync specifically to the syllable and the phoneme rather than the whole word.
Got
So
it.
yeah, but I mean, from a user experience point of view, in this specific case, it was not required. But I get your point. It's definitely possible.
Okay. Um, Jean Rene asks, may I ask what you studied and how you transitioned to your current position at Soundly?
Okay. All right. That's a question I did not expect. I basically, I mean, have been working as the sound designer, music composer, and then transitioning into audio director. And what I realized over the years is I like to create something that will be used by somebody else to then create an art. And that's a whole amazing experience. That it's a brilliant feeling when you make, for example, and I think Nick will and Joshua, I think both of you will also agree that when you create a effect, right, a very basic effect, like say just a distortion effect, and you hear that a band used your effect plugin in their song, I feel it's much more better feeling than having to create that song itself. I mean, if that makes sense at all. So that is where I got inclined, and then I learned a lot. I did self-learning, and I used platforms like the Audio Programmer community, the Discord channels, and a little bit of. I kind of always had the approach of product first, coding second, and that kind of I think helped me to get involved with some amazing people all over the world. So yeah, if you needed some suggestion on that, I would suggest like find your area of interest, what specifically you want to build, and you will kind of find a way to find resources to learn. And there's always a Discord server from audio programmer community that you can always ask in very simple questions. And believe me, nobody judges. Nobody will think like what basic question you're asking. Everybody is very open to giving you feedback. So I would just say take your first step. Like don't hold back.
Amazing. And can you talk a little bit about your current role? So what do you do for Soundly? What There was another question that asked if there was like a game in particular that you're working on or a project in particular that you're able to talk about.
Yeah, I think I can talk about things that are already released. So I worked about, like I mentioned, on the integration between Wise and Soundly. So that is one of the domain that I worked, and there are a few more projects that are going on in the background, which I think over the time when it releases, we'll get to know. But at the same time, I also kind of do consultation for different audio companies who are starting out and they are building their own products, to just nudge them into selecting the right platform, for example, right, use the right framework, use the right backend, not to make mistakes that I kind of have made in my journey. So yeah.
Amazing. So that looks like all of our questions from the audience. Thank you very much, Prashant.
Awesome.
Fantastic talk, and I know a lot of people will find that really useful. So thank you very much. And before we continue on, just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to give a talk on the Audio Programmer Meetup, you're able to. So we're always asking for people to submit presentations that they may be interested in giving and showing other people in the audio programmer community what you've been up to and some of your perspectives on audio software development. And you can find out information on that if you go to theaudioprogrammer.com/submit. You can submit a proposal, and we'd love to hear your ideas and see if it's something that would fit with what we're working on. And with that, we will go ahead and segue into our next talk. And I'm really excited about this because Nick is going to be talking about AudioKit, and I've had the pleasure of meeting the AudioKit team, and they're really awesome to work with, really awesome open source framework for Mac and iOS. So big shout out to the AudioKit team, to RA, Matthew Fetcher, Taylor, and the rest of the team. Hope you're all doing well. And with that, I will pass things over to Nick. He's going to build a sampler synth for us today, and he's going to do it live. So Nick is a musician turned app developer, releasing apps under the name Moby Pixel. He's launching a new app tomorrow using AudioKit, and he's going to share some of the lessons learned in the process of making it. So I will pass it over to you, Nick.
All right. Thank you so much. I got some seasonal allergies, so if I sound extra baritone, that's the reason why. I'm not putting on my radio voice or anything. Prashant, awesome job. That was really interesting stuff. I forgot where I was for a little while, just getting sunk into it. And then Joshua, thank you for having me. I do want to echo exactly what you said. The AudioKit community is awesome. I recently got back into audio development earlier this year, and I didn't know what I was doing at first. I've been releasing apps for around 12 years. I knew what I was doing in terms of app development, but one thing about AudioKit is it's an open source community. So Ari, who's the head of it, he is totally open to pull requests. So if you want to add something to AudioKit, if you want to make it better, then you can do a pull request. That's where I was kind of the noob. Is with GitHub, I didn't really know how to do pull requests. So I remember the first pull request I did, it was just I wrote in text like, can you fix this thing in there? He's like, I don't see the code. So then I put my comment in code brackets. He's like, no, at least you posted it in the chat, but that doesn't quite cut it. Since then, I've done I've gotten several pieces of pull requests that I've put into AudioKit, and specifically I've been paying attention to Apple Sampler. The name Apple Sampler is a little bit of a misnomer because it's actually AudioKit's implementation of AV Audio Unit Sampler. So I am going to make a sampler using it. I'm releasing the app, and I use this. I went up this learning curve. So hopefully you're going to learn everything I learned all synthesized into 30 minutes. And I have this little 30-minute timer that I got. So we'll see if it's done, then I'll be happy. And yeah.
And if it's not, then what do we do?
I die. That's yeah.
No, we don't want
My
that.
career's over. Yeah. So here we go. The first thing we got to do when you're making a sampler is you have something to sample. So this is a ukulele that my grandfather had, and whenever I used to go to his house, then for Christmas time, then this is what I would always pick up. They had instruments around. I'd always be jamming on them. All right, so first thing we got to do, we got to record sounds. Now they are doing some stuff outside right now. I think they're mowing the lawn. 'Tis the season for mowing the lawn. But I'm going to use a DAW that comes on everyone's iPhone. It's called Voice Memo, and I'm going to record a sound. Okay, so everyone be quiet for a second. And perfect. I only heard my daughter in the background, but that's okay. She's homesick and she's watching Sonic. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this sound. I'm going to airdrop it to my computer. And as I do this stuff, I can tell you more about AudioKit. The cool thing about AudioKit, and in particular, the area that I'm using, is that it's just a very thin layer. So that means that if AudioKit is gone tomorrow, all of my code isn't instantly deprecated, which is what happened in the past whenever I was releasing music apps. I was using an OpenAL sound engine, and it got deprecated at the same time whenever Apple was changing from 32-bit to 64-bit. So I had to update my app. The audio engine was going to have to be updated, and everyone was into Audio Bus at the time, so I was going to have to do Audio Bus. And then I looked at the apps and they weren't making money. So I was like, I'm going to do game development now. I'm kind of over this for a little bit. So that was about 5 years ago. And now since I recently moved, I decided, okay, I want to get back into audio development. I found the Audio Programmer. I was looking at Juice, and then finally I saw AudioKit again. Before, I thought it was all about synthesizers and making mobile synthesizers. Then as I dug into it, they have something really cool with AudioKit right now called the Cookbook. You can download that from GitHub and install it on your device. And it's really a great taster of what all you can do with AudioKit. Some of the stuff is already built on top of Apple's code, but Apple's code a lot of times is accessible, but it's not discoverable. And that's what AudioKit does a great job of. So now I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we will see the sound that I have sent over. Here we go. Welcome to my screen. And here is the sound that we just brought in, our ukulele. Let's see if we can hear that. Okay, did you hear it?
Yep, all good.
Awesome. All right. Kind of has a weird fade, but you know what? We're going to have a weird fade instrument. We're doing this live. We're doing it live. All right, so I'm going to take that sound. Let's create a new Xcode project. And creating a new Xcode project, that's just like a brand new baby. It's precious. All right, so we're going to call this Yuki app because it's going to be our ukulele. And we're using Swift UI. One of the cool things about AudioKit 5, which is their current iteration, is all their examples are built on top of Swift UI. You could still use Swift, and I'm sure you could use Objective-C or whatever else, but Swift UI, that's where the examples are, so that's where I started working. So whenever you're creating an Apple sampler instrument, there is one thing that Apple is very particular about where the sounds come from. Okay, so what I'm going to do inside of my project is I'm going to bring in a sounds folder. This seems like a trivial step, but it can break your apps. Also, I will say that I have a YouTube channel where I do these tutorials. If I miss anything, some of those go a little more in depth, but this is going to cover some things that aren't in those videos as well. So we have our sounds folder. We can now drag our sound in there. Let's rename our sound. Come here. Let's go ahead and drag that in. Okay, and let's rename our file to Yuki. Now, this file type is a, what was it, an M4A? That only an animal would make a music app with an M4A sound, but it does work. So that's what we're going to try out here. Now, over here, I have Logic, and Logic has an awesome sampler. The sampler inside of Logic is the AV audio unit sampler. So whenever I drag this sound over here, you can see it automatically pops up a menu, and I can do sampler zone per note. So already this has mapped it to a keyboard, and whenever I click the notes, you should be able to hear it. There we go. Maybe we don't like the that little thing at the beginning, so I'm going to drag over our starting point some. Okay, we get rid of a little bit of it, so that sounds a little bit better, but we don't want any popping. So what I'm going to do is they actually have an amplitude envelope right here. I can add a short, sweep going into the sound, and then I can add some release time. So the release will allow anytime I'm playing a note for it to ring out. There we go. We are working on our hit app. One of the cool things about this is they also have a low pass filter in here. You can route all of these different things, multiple LFOs. You can use the pitch right here. So if I do details, I can actually have two voices in unison. But I'll play two voices at once, but I'm also detuning them by 10 cents. So now whenever I play it, it should sound a little thicker. I don't know if that's in stereo in your headphones, but in mine, it sounded super awesome. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say File, Save As, Yuki. But I want to save it inside of this new project that we just created in that sounds folder. So here's my Yuki app. Here's my sounds. There we are. The instrument is just Yuki. Sounds good. All right. So now we're actually done with Logic. We don't need Logic anymore. You can reopen that EXS file in the future if you want to add more things. And certainly you would want to do that. Just have everything routing to different notes on a MIDI keyboard and things like that. But in the app I made, it also has a low pass filter. I'm not even using AudioKit's low pass filter. I'm using the low pass filter that's right here. I'm using the envelope that's right here. One step, if you are looking at taking this approach, you can't increase the value of the attack or release. You can only decrease it. So if you're creating an instrument that you're going to use, then max out the attack, max out the release, and then come up here and envelope 1. I might make the attack. Let's see here. Attack. I'm going to set it all the way down. Okay. So what that did, that's a problem. Let's move it this way. Anyways, that's a tricky one. That's one. There are some gotchas with implementing this. I think at some point I'm going to make a video on in-depth use of just this sampler and getting it working with AV audio unit sampler. But anyways, the sand is literally dropping. So we're going to move on to the next part. So here we are inside of Xcode. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to clip on to our app delegate. And we want to set up our AV audio. Let's see, what is it called? AV audio session. Let's see, by the magic of using the little snippets, I'll put it right here. And you can see it's AV audio session. And we are setting up a shared instance. We're also setting what our buffer length is going to be. And we are setting it to playback. You'll notice that we're getting a bunch of errors. That's because we're trying to access code that's inside of both AudioKit and AV Foundation. But once again, by the power of snippets, we will import those two things. Now let's go into our actual project, our actual view that we're going to be seeing in the app. So I'll go ahead and I'll build this out. And let's import AudioKit. But let's not core AudioKit. That's something different. All right, let's import AudioKit. Let's also import one of the newer packages from AudioKit that's called Keyboard. And let's also import Tonic. That's not how we spell. Tonic is, Keyboard has a dependency on Tonic or vice versa. If you're going to use Keyboard, you have to have Tonic in there as well. But it doesn't know what AudioKit is yet because we haven't added that package. In the past, whenever you wanted to add AudioKit to your application, you would have used CocoaPods. I hate CocoaPods, okay? CocoaPods, no bueno. But now they have Swift Package Manager. So you can just go up to File, Packages, and actually you go here to File, Add Packages. But if you've added it previously, you can click this little stop sign and you can add AudioKit right here. We're using the branch, the main branch. Whenever you're in development, you might want to be using the main branch. But by the time you're ready to release, you might want to stick your app to a specific version. That way things are going to break in the future. Okay, so I've added in our package for AudioKit, and now we'll want to do the same thing for Keyboard. I'm just waiting for the, let's try and build it, and there we go. There's my error coming up. We'll click it again. We're going to search. We have our keyboard. This is a keyboard. There's a little GIF there. That's cool. They can embed that to show you what was there. This keyboard package came out during the development of my app. It actually came out during the testing phase of my app. And it was a real lifesaver because Swift UI and UIKit don't play so well together. Swift UI, if you're using the gestures, actually do not support multi-touch. So you still have to use UI touch inside of your application if you want to have multi-touch. I remember during the development, I found a problem with it where the touches weren't working right. I told Ari about it, and by the morning, Taylor had gone in and already rewritten the entire touch code for the package. So that was awesome. Same thing with the knobs and everything. So even though we're using Swift UI, a lot of these elements that are built in, we're using UI touch stuff, UIKit things. All right, so let's do another magic trick using our snippets that I wrote earlier. And this is going to be our Apple sampler class. So I'll tell you exactly what's happening here. Whenever we started opening up our view from our delegate, we're opening up this view that is our content view. But we want our content view to be managing data, and that data is going to be inside of this class that I've called sampler class. This sampler class is an observable object, so I'm going to be observing things that change if those values are published. All right, so the first thing that we set up is we're going to set up our audio engine instance, and this is our AudioKit audio engine, which would be similar to Apple's AV audio engine. We're also going to set up an instrument, which is our Apple sampler instrument. You know what you all are going to like? If I make it bigger. There we go. And also feel free to ask questions as we go. I can multitask. Then the next thing that we do is whenever we create this class where you have an init method that's called for us, I'm going to have our engine's output connected to the node, which is our instrument. And I'm going to load our instrument. This load instrument method is very similar to the one that you would find in AV audio unit sampler. And then we're going to start the engine. The only difference is from what you would do with AV audio unit stuff is you're not attaching and detaching nodes. Instead, you're just managing the output of the engine by itself. Okay, and down here, we have our node on and node off method. Well, those methods are going to be speaking to our keyboard, which we will put down here in our view. Okay. Once again, by the magic of snippets, we have added to our view a pointer to our conductor. Get out of here, you. A pointer to our conductor, which is our state object of our class. And inside of this, the body, I have added a Swift UI keyboard. The Swift UI keyboard is pointing to the keyboard that comes from AudioKit's keyboard package. The reason that I am not just putting this keyboard directly in here in our view is because SwiftUI has some fun features where if you embed a view inside of your SwiftUI thing, anytime you update a state object with, say, like this conductor, it's also going to redraw the keyboard. Well, we don't want that. So instead, I've moved this into its own subclass view, whatever you call it. And now it's not going to update if I update things in my conductor. Okay, so that's a gotcha. That's one of those gotchas where I was playing my app close to release and I was like, why is it laggy? What's wrong with AudioKit's code? And Ari was like, what's wrong with your code, bro? And he was right. I did it wrong. But anyways, we're all learning together. We're all in this together. And that's the cool thing about this audio community, both AudioKit and not with AudioKit, is I really do feel like the mobile music space, it feels like everyone's in it, from the content creators to the people making apps. It's really cool. I didn't always have that when I was doing game development because it felt like it was just more about me. And that's my TED Talk about friendship. All right, so now inside of the keyboard, we have our two methods that we are calling, and we are instantiating a cool word, a piano here, and we're setting our pitch range. You could set these pitch ranges dynamically, but right now I have them just hard-coded in. And we do have two methods that we're calling, node on and node off, and our keyboard is going to be sending a pitch. So back up in our class, I am calling those to our instrument, our keyboard instrument. I want to play the MIDI note number of the pitch's int value whenever it comes in. And I'm not using this point for CG stuff, but that's something you could use if you wanted your keyboard to have velocity sensing. So if you touch near the bottom of the key, maybe you want to send that value to your velocity, you know. And that certainly is a good way to be more expressive with what you have. Separately, if I wanted to, I'm actually not showing off MIDI support today, but if I, let's get there. If I came up here and I added MIDI listener, then it should give me, it should complain to me. And then I'm going to say, okay, give me all the stubs. It gives me all these different methods. You could put your instrument playing method right here in MIDI node on, and suddenly it's going to work. Like you plug in your MIDI controller. If you set up that listener, it gives you these methods. It's super cool. And there are things with app development that are always going to be difficult. And then there are things that are just awesome whenever it just works. The MIDI implementation just works. I do know that they're working on MIDI kit with AudioKit right now, so it is likely to change in the future. That's another thing with AudioKit, is it is evolving. So that's another reason that you want to get kind of pinned down to a version once you release your app and kind of let it live there for a little while until you upgrade to the new versions. But you know what? I think this might actually work. So let's try coming over here. We want to select our device. Something that I am not covering right now is how to get things installed on your device. You know, getting the certificates and the provisioning profile stuff working, that is a whole different separate talk that I'm not really going over. Once you figure that stuff out one time, then you're kind of set. But it can be a pain initially. Just know that we've all been through it, and you will get through it as well. All right, so it should be building our app now. I'm not building to a device, but let's see if it's playing here. All right, it is playing. That's actually a Mac OS build that we did for it. So that's cool. Something I didn't want to show you or didn't intend to show. It actually is working on Mac OS, but now let's see it building directly to our device. There, it's shown up. That's our Yuki app. There is a way to share this screen, but we're going to do it. We're going to be a little janky with it. Okay, so there you see, we have our keyboard. Can you hear this in the mic okay?
We can, yes.
Okay. I'm not a Alamir, so I'm not the type of like touch, performer, but you can hear the sounds are there. All right, let's see if I can give it somewhat of a proper demo of it. Here we get some sound there. Not janky at all. Anyways, it's working. And that's pretty cool. You know, we got it working with very few lines of code. And in the little series on YouTube I've been doing, I've been trying to make apps in less than 100 lines of code. Well, this is a working sampler in 35 lines of code. So that's pretty awesome. But let's say you're not so sure about AudioKit because you're afraid, you know, it might get deprecated one day. One day, maybe what's going to happen is Ari's going to decide, I'm not updating AudioKit anymore. I'm just going to go mountain biking because I think he likes biking, and mountain biking all the time sounds pretty cool. So in that case, I just want to show real quick what could happen if we replace that tiny layer of AudioKit. So by the power of our snippet, once again, I am going to change over our code to now using AV Audio Engine and using AV Audio Unit Sampler. To do this, we need to import our AV Foundation. Sorry, Ari. I'm sorry, Ari. I'm done with AudioKit. It was fun while it lasted. But so now we're removing AudioKit. But the cool thing about AudioKit now is it's no longer just the engine that it was before. What's happened is, what are we doing wrong here? We don't have a MIDI note number. Oh, we should still have that. Oh, maybe we still need AudioKit. We do still need AudioKit. Just for this part. There's a way that you can rewrite these. Let's see if I can just send force in without using our MIDI note number. We'll try that out, see if it works for us. Haha. That's all you have to do is you just have to click stop signs, and then the stop signs fix your problems for you. All right, so now we can safely remove AudioKit. The cool thing with AudioKit now is it's not just a framework where everything is built into it. I am now going to be using AV Audio Unit Sampler, but I am using the keyboard and tonic from AudioKit. So you can use separate parts. I imagine even if you're using something like Juice, if you have a Swift layer, you could actually be using AudioKit's knobs. You could use the visualizers. You could use any other part of AudioKit. So you can really plug and play these things as you want. So let's go ahead and hit stop. We'll hit play again. The only thing that's anticlimactic about this is it sounds exactly the same. But now we're using the AudioKit keyboard, but we're using AV Audio Unit Sampler's implementation. So you can feel safe using this framework. I feel safe using this framework because I know that it is built so close to what Apple already has in place. And really, a lot of the magic that's happening here is how robust this AV Audio Unit Sampler is. So why use AudioKit? Why should we use AudioKit if we can just bypass it entirely like I did? Well, let's go back to adding the AudioKit one like we had before. There's our AudioKit one. We'll add AudioKit back in. One of the things that I think that's so great about it, aside from just, you know, it's just awesome, is how easy it is to start adding effects and different things from different packages. So say we want to add reverb. Well, I can just add reverb to our output right here. I might want to turn this into a knob. I might want to expose, you know, a dry wet mix that's inside of there. But now I'll just hit play. This reverb is actually a reverb that is built in with Apple's code too, but you don't use it this way. It's not this easy to just have it working. And you have reverb. You could tap that into, you know, if I click on this and jump to definition, that's a way you can find out what all this code is pointing to. Is you double click on it, jump to definition. Now I can look at the reverb. and I can see what different values I have access to and what they do. And ultimately, I can see that where is this pulling from? Well, it's pulling from AV audio unit reverb. Okay, so that's using one of, but say you want to use something else. Say you want to use like some pitch shifting. Well, that's going to live, a lot of the more advanced features like that are going to, let me see how much sand I have left. All right, we're good, but I got to go fast. This one is going to be inside of SoundPipe, AudioKit SoundPipe, or rather SoundPipe AudioKit. So now once it starts complaining here in a second, I can click this and I'll import SoundPipe. And I'm going to try and pitch shift the sound that we have. You know what I'm going to do? They're JHS pedals. I love guitar pedals. My app that I'm making is about running synthesizers through overdrive pedals. Well, JHS just released a new pedal that's called an octave reverb. So it leaves this main sound unaffected, but it adds like an octave above for your reverb. We're going to try and make something like that real fast. Okay, so we want our sound to be unaffected. So what I'm going to do to our output, I'm going to have a mixer, and I'm going to send it our instrument. And I'm also going to send it this reverb that's all the way up. That's I'm missing a closing bracket, aren't I? But there's something built into AudioKit SoundPipe that's called pitch shift. Let's see, it should tell me what it's pitch shifter. Okay, so I'm going to open that up with open brackets, and I need to tell it what to shift to. So I'm going to shift it to, actually, let's see what the methods are in there. So I'm gonna jump to the definition. I see that we have something that we can call for window size, and something for our crossfade, and something for our pitch shift. Okay, so we're using semitones, so we're going to go up 12 to go up an octave. And our window size, you know, the lower you keep your window, the faster that it's going to, the buffer will be. But if you fill up a buffer too quickly, sometimes it hasn't given the sound time to breathe yet. You're going to have some crackling and popping. So I'm actually going to go all the way up to this 10,000 value for our window size. Let's go back. All right, so our shift, we're going to go up 12. And our window size, I'm going to have that be 10,000. Did you know when you write numbers, you can do an underscore there and it'll read that as 10,000 as well? I didn't know that until recently. So let's try and run it. And hopefully that looks right, like it's going to play the sound, but our reverb is just going to be an octave above. Hello. Hello. All right, there we go. So it's building to our device. Let's try playing. So that's pretty awesome, right? So you just with a few lines of code, we've been able to add these things. Now, typically what you might want to do is you might want to, let's say, what's my next step? Where do you go from here? Well, inside of my app, I had imported controls, which is another AudioKit package. And with the controls, you can then map them to all these different effects you have. So then you can, you know, not to totally just like shill my own app, but that's what these are. These knobs up here, they're based on the AudioKit controls. We actually worked on getting these done, and the work that went into these is what is in AudioKit's code. So it really has been a cool circular journey. Also, you know, Ari and Taylor made these little sliders on the side. This really does showcase a lot of the new features that came up in AudioKit. So if it's broken, be sure to write Ari about anything that's broken, but just say good thanks to me. What is the other next step is to have this working with AUV3. Right now, people expect applications to have AUV3 support on mobile, and that can be difficult. You know, I made a package for it. There's also an AUV3 example for AudioKit 4, but hopefully that's something that's going to come in the future, is something where, I don't know if I added the controls or not. Let's see. Did I add it already? I may have added controls twice. Anyways, yeah, AUV3 support is so that you can use your application inside of an AUV3 host application like GarageBand, Cubasis, AUM, or whatever else. And that's really what was different about audio app development this time, and what brought me back to it is that audio apps on mobile are no longer toys. They are now a robust toolkit that if you get them in a musician's hands, they can actually use that for instruments to go on and record professional sounding things on a mobile device. And it's still early. It's only going to be growing. So I've chosen AudioKit. I've chosen Apple Sampler. That's where I'm putting my flag in the ground. And once you have a working sampler, really your possibility for making apps is endless. You know, you can make a sequencer, you can make a ukulele app. Yeah, I think that's the last thing I'll try and do is let's just see if I can add a knob here for one of those things. So let's do I'll type in small knob. There's a small knob example where I can have our values and range. Maybe the value that I'm doing this in the wrong one. Let's come down here. We're going to add our small knob, and we want to change. Let's our reverb that we did. Let's come in here. We're going to make this a reverb variable now, as opposed to having it just be something that we put on there as a let, and then we're never touching again. So I have our reverb, and our reverb will equal all this jazz. There we go. And then now I can just pass it the reverb, as opposed to passing it what I was passing before. So now, since I have this variable, I'm going to publish this. It's going to be a published variable. Oh, that looks right, but I don't think it is right. I think it has to be, yes, at published. Now down here, I'm going to have the value be conductor dot reverb dot dry wet mix. I'm going totally off script now. So if this doesn't work, then that's because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Let's see if it works. That's the fun of it, right? This is the fun part. If you can't do this part, then the rest of it, I don't know. I think it's fun. All right, so we have our reverb. That should build, believe. Oh, we're missing an argument. Oh, no. Okay. Instead of instantiating our reverb right here, we just want to say we're going to have some reverb. Reverb coming up, and we'll put it in our init method. All right, let's see. And there's our not so small knob up there on the top, but now let's see if we can turn that down. You can see that it changed the wet dry mix in there. Hopefully you can hear that through the microphone. So that's AudioKit. That's how to get started with it. If you want to learn more about it, then just check out AudioKit's GitHub packages. Check out the cookbook. Just play around with it. That's how I really went up this learning curve, and it's been a wonderful journey about learning about synthesis and making music apps with AudioKit at the same time. Because I do think it has the discoverability there, whereas it's hard to find that just with Apple's code alone. Yeah, open for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nick, aka Moby Pixel. And that's awesome. Great. So we have a couple questions here. First question is, will you have any AUV3 walkthrough videos with AudioKit coming in the future?
Yeah, so I actually already have one AUV3 video for an instrument that's up there. And let's see, are you still seeing me? I think I stopped screen sharing.
I stopped you, but if
Okay,
you
awesome.
share again, please do so.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So yeah, I made a video on using AUV3 for an instrument, and I'm still learning with the stuff. I thought whenever I first created that video and the example, I used it in GarageBand. It worked perfectly. It was working in GarageBand. Then I downloaded AUM, and I was like, I was rendering the audio in the wrong place, so I had to adjust that. And I was like, okay. One of the reasons I had to re-render the audio is because in Apple Sampler, which is that layer on top of AV audio unit sampler, if you sneeze on that sampler, you drop the samples. So anytime you plug in the headphones, there's a chance that it's going to drop the audio connection. If you get a phone call, it's going to drop the audio connection to those audio files, and you have to restart that. You have to like reset up your sampler anytime those things happen. And because of that, I had to be very careful in the places where I was sending data or setting up the instrument inside of the AUV3 extension. Then I tried Cubasis. It wasn't working in Cubasis, so I fixed it up in Cubasis. So now that I am launching my app tomorrow, I think what's going to happen is as it gets in the hands of mobile music users, they're going to find areas that were blind spots to me and my testers, and whatever they end up, finding, or any solutions I have, those are going to get rolled into that GitHub project, and hopefully those will get rolled into a proper AudioKit example at some point using AudioKit 5. But as for right now, if you look on my GitHub page, you will see the AUV3 example for the instrument using this AV audio unit sampler, the Apple sampler. And I also have a YouTube video about it, just talking about how to do that. It is a different process if you are trying to use, I think there are 3 types of AUV3s right now. There's like ones that use MIDI, there's ones that you can have as an instrument, and there's ones that you can do as an audio effect. I'd love to do the audio effect ones. I think it's just a matter of me actually going up those learning curve and then turning around and making working examples.
Fantastic. So Wave Morpher asks, what if you wanted an XY pad? How much more difficult would it be to implement something like that?
Yeah, so in the keyboard, it's either in keyboard and controls. Actually, it's in controls. There is an XY pad in there. And you can use that. I mean, basically you would take that map value, and it's probably a binding value to a float. So you just have that binding value update, and you could have it be your float variable, and then in a did set method within that float, you could be doing any kind of computation. Or if you're using something like AudioKit's reverb or AudioKit's delay, those things, the parameters that are inside of them will update that stuff for you automatically. So once you're binding to something like I did with the dry wet mix, I don't really have to handle anything in like a did set method.
Okay. Ale London asks, what combination of device model and OS gets the lowest maintenance latency, and how many milliseconds? That would probably be a difficult question. Do you happen to know?
I mean, now that M1 is out, any M1 devices are going to be faster. I have just like an iPhone 12 Pro that I was testing on, and the latency is very low. It also has to do with how quickly you can fill the buffer. And fortunately, now we're at a point where you can lower that buffer size as these have gotten faster, and it can play back without those glitches. Previously, like if you're building something for an older device, this one is like the iPad Air 2, then you do need to raise that buffer to something like 1024. Whereas the default for my application right now is 254, which is also the default inside of AUM and the default inside of Cubasis. So I figured if that's fast enough for them, then it's fast enough for me. In terms of the milliseconds of delay, because the keyboard isn't using Swift UI directly. I think people have said with Swift UI, it's not super fast and it's not really for real-time stuff. I'm not sure if, since they switched to using UI touch stuff, if that's actually faster than the gestures. But whenever I lower the buffer speed and I'm just playing on the keyboard, there is not a noticeable latency for me. Now, I'm not playing like, 200 BPM, like 16th notes really fast or anything. I'm not, but in terms of just like playing a keyboard and it interrupting my flow of actually trying to play, it feels like I'm actually playing it once I've set that buffer speed.
Great. Wave Morpher asks if you could explain published and state object. Swift have a lot of these things like observable object. I find it hard to understand the Swift model of shareable state.
Yes. Okay. So rewind to the beginning of the year before I started doing the AudioKit stuff. I didn't know Swift UI. I was hesitant whenever I started out in Objective-C. So whenever Swift came out, I was like, I don't want to do that. And then by the time Swift UI came out, I was really like, nope, I do not want to learn another language on this same platform. No, thank you. But working through the AudioKit examples, I was surprised that I actually did enjoy learning Swift UI and the way things work. Yes, with having the published value. So let's, I can jump back into the code real quick. Let's share that. Okay, so down here, and you will see this in the cookbook. If you use the cookbook and download the stuff, you'll see sometimes smaller examples and certainly better documented examples than what I have here. But right here, my conductor is this state object, and whatever this class is that is pointing to is going to be an observable object. Now, by default, it is not observing what any of these values are doing. So if I were to come off here and let's take @published off and see what happens. And another thing I wanted to show that I didn't do is inside the keyboard, you can actually do a lot of different layouts. It's not just this one keyboard layout. There's a scaled layout. But one of the ones that we worked on is called guitar. And Ari said this looks like his guitar. It's got the Roger Lindstrument type layout, the all fours, and pretty cool that you get that for free just by changing that one little line of code. And it's totally extensible, so you can add your own views to it or whatever you want. So down here you have the all fours layout. But now that I turned off that @published, whenever I'm moving this, it's not updating. It's updating what the control is doing, but it's not updating it on the screen. I don't know if you can hear that, it's adding the reverb. So that is what is happening by making this a published variable. And you might not want to have your entire reverb be published. Maybe I just want that part of the reverb to be published. Well, in that case, I could have a variable, an @published variable that I'm going to call dry wet. Okay. And by default, let's set this to what we have our dry wet mix set to. And I want to extend it and say did set. Now, whenever we set this, I want to change our reverbs dry wet mix to what we just changed our dry wet to. Now, there we go. And now down here, instead of our reverb, let's see, instead of changing the reverb, I want to change dry wet, that variable I just set up. Now, because I am going to be updating this published value of dry wet, I can set this reverbs dry wet mix without having to publish every single thing that's happening in the reverb. Are we building? We're not building. Binding. Oh no. Okay, so what is it complaining about? Because it is.
Taylor says, gotta make dry wet a float.
Okay, and to do that, I go boop, and I just say, hey, float. Or you might even be able to do like add a .0. I think sometimes that turns into doubles. I wish that they would, convert a double to float for me and not complain about it, but that doesn't always happen. Okay, so now you can see it's.
Yep.
So there we go. We're adding it without me having to update everything that's happening inside of this reverb class. We're keeping it very small. And I only put the app publish things that are here in my observable object. The other option is that I don't even know if this is going to work, but it's, for example, go with me. I could have it down here, and instead of it being a publish variable, this is now going to be state. Let's see if that works. It's probably not going to work. Taylor might be yelling at me now. Oh, hang on a tick. Maybe the kids got it after all. So now I'm not even using the other class at all for what I'm changing. It's just something that's directly on my view, and I'm accessing its state. Oh, it didn't work. What did I do wrong?
It wouldn't be
Oh,
live
man.
coding if it all worked.
I was almost cool for a second. I almost didn't mess up. I'm glad I messed up on at least one thing. So yeah, if you put that up here in our app publish, that's what I think I did in my application. At first, I had just the best way to see these examples and see a good implementation of them is to look at the cookbook. A lot of times they will have like a data model where they're just publishing everything in that data model. So you'll have like the amplitude, the pitch, all these different things. And then you're publishing just that version. Not describing it exactly right, but I found that you don't have to piece it out. You don't have to have like 100 different app publish things. You can have it all built into its own struct. And that struct is like your data model.
Cool. Jean-René asks why you preferred AudioKit to working with Juice, or did he misunderstand?
Yeah, so I didn't go deep enough into Juice to really know. I would love to go more into Juice. I mean, like, I think it would be a cool video idea to have a project of showing how to make something with Juice and AudioKit side by side, like using AudioKit for the keyboards and knobs like I just did, but having Juice be the audio engine, just to show sort of how you might implement something like that. What I like about the value proposition I like about Juice is that it works everywhere, right? The thing is I come from an iOS background where I've spent a lot of time on UIKit and just in Apple's ecosystem of using Xcode. So when I could just use something that kept me in Xcode, I didn't need to open up Terminal or try any other application. I felt right at home with doing it, even though a lot of this stuff was Swift UI. And I still have some headaches with Swift UI, like getting Swift UI working in AUV3, an AUV3 app. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I think I'm going to have to figure that out real quick because the AUV3 side of my app doesn't look nearly as attractive as the in-app stuff that's using Swift UI. But yeah, I think that's just where I chose to go up this hill. I think if I used Juice, I would love Juice. I think if I used anything and invested time in it, I would love it. But I come from sort of the background of doing Objective-C first, and then the apps that I wanted to port over to Android. So I learned Java for that. Then I got into game development. So I started doing C# and Unity, and now coming back to doing Swift UI. So really the platform is just a means to an end. The end is that I want to create a product. And I feel like AudioKit has helped make a productive workflow for me, that now with a single line of code. And I do make this stuff look easier than it actually is. Like there's a lot of hours of head scratching that went into this, but whenever it comes to getting the thing to do the thing, you don't have to do a lot. There's not a lot of overhead there. And then once you look at AudioKit's code, and I right click this Apple sampler, I jump in here to the Apple sampler and I see that, okay, what is happening here? What are these different methods? I see, okay, it's using this sampler unit. Let me right click on that. Okay, so this is a load instrument. I'm going to jump to the definition. We are just one layer away from now I'm inside of AVF Foundation AV Audio Unit Sampler. So yeah, that's as close to the metal, if you will, that you can get. Not actually, that's a bad word to use because Apple actually has metal. I don't mean that metal, but this is as close to their piece of the source code that I can get to. Mm-hmm. What happens beneath this layer? I don't know. Nobody knows because Apple is a closed source company. So that's one of the challenges that happens with AudioKit and creating apps with AudioKit or anything is we don't know how Apple is using these pieces of AV Audio Unit Sampler. But as people like me create apps and put them out there and we learn more about it from reading bug reports that come in or experimenting and then putting that stuff back into AudioKit, that's just going to make apps better for anyone that's using this stuff in the future. And admittedly, the corner of AudioKit I'm working on, it's just this Apple sampler. So that's just a very small piece of the puzzle. They also have inside of SoundPipe, they have all kinds of DSP stuff. So if you are a glutton for punishment, that's where you can go look at that DSP. And also they have there's a second sampler called Done Sampler. So if you don't even want to use this sampler, and I know with AudioKit Pro, a lot of their apps they're using now, they're using Done Sampler, which is built on top of like C++ from the ground up. The reason I choose to use Apple Sampler is stupid. I'm stupid. No, I don't. I think just because it's what Apple has, it's what was integrated with Logic. And there was a good example of it whenever I first started using AudioKit. But I really think either one of those could be a good option to go with. They both probably have their own headaches. The Done Sampler, the other one that they use in AudioKit, it has to do with using SFZ files. So if you're using EXS instruments, then I would say use Apple Sampler. I think it's a little more robust, but it has some bugs that are inside of Apple's code that they are likely never to fix. But if you can work with the bugs, then you can create something really special, I think.
Amazing. So the next question is from Wave Morpher. How do you access the raw buffer values of the sampler?
Yeah, so that's what was the things that I did right in the very beginning, where I was setting up this AV audio unit shared instance preferred in-out buffer duration. So I'm pulling in a buffer length here that is medium, and that is a constant that I think jumps to the value of 8. I don't know if it's, yeah. So because of some multiplication stuff that's happening here, the value that I am using by default right now is 256. Really what you would want to do is download the app on various devices and test it out. I think let me think. I was actually looking at AudioKit Pro's apps to see what they started with in their applications and in my application. I have the ability for users to go in and change these at runtime. And I basically save that to a preset. So anytime they use the application, I will jump to that. If you're doing something where you want to render the microphone really quickly and you want to have low latency, I think you choose either short or very short for that buffer speed. But obviously, as you have more robust DSP, if you're doing, your reverbs and pitch shifting, then you're going to start to have some popping that's going on there. I've probably already updated them, but let me just check very quickly. Oh, well, what you could do is if you download AudioKit's VHS synth or AudioKit's the Synth 1, you'll see what their default values are. I think because Synth 1 is using actual synthesized oscillators, its buffer size is a little bit larger. It might be something like 1024. And then I think their newest one, VHS Synth, is long, so it's 512. But for whatever reason, and you do notice a little bit of a lag because of that. The higher your buffer speed, or not buffer speed, the higher your buffer length, the more latency you're going to notice from the time that you touch the screen to whenever you hear the sound. So lower buffer, faster latency, but you just want to check on the device. I don't know if AV audio unit sampler is optimized to run well on these buffers, and there is actually a different DSP kernel rendering thing that's happening with AudioKit versus using just Apple's code exclusively. So they might handle these differently. I've not worked extensively with using AV audio unit sampler outside of AudioKit, but my assumption is they would be pretty equally performant for both.
Okay. Pretty sure the answer to this is no, but I will ask it anyway. Monte Music Channel wants to know if there's any direct disc streaming in AudioKit.
Direct disc stream?
Yeah, so rather than needing to load the sounds into RAM, is there anything that streams directly from disk? So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the answer is no, and that if the answer is yes, that RA will correct us.
Yeah, Ari and Taylor, so I will say, like, Taylor, I think AudioKit has been a cast of evolving people over time. There have been, at one time, Matthew Fetcher was doing a lot of stuff on getting the source code up to Swift, but now his updates, mostly he's working on AudioKit Pro applications. And really, in the recent past, I feel like the people I've seen who are most active with doing pull requests and adding stuff to AudioKit, Ari, of course, any pull request goes through Ari's hands. And then on top of that, Taylor he and Ari have been working on the controls, on the keyboard, basically all the new stuff that you see coming out of AudioKit. They are at the helm of creating that. And then other smaller pull requests, those are coming from Kim. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but MIDI Bud is the apps that he created. All the apps that he's been creating, he's been taking that source code and putting it back into AudioKit. I've been doing stuff with Apple Sampler as I've found things. Matt Pfeiffer. Yeah, there's really so many people. But thank you, Taylor. I feel like Taylor wrote a good chunk of my app without even knowing it because he's done the controls and keyboards and stuff. But in terms of the streaming, like the PCM stream or whatever it's called, I don't know. For questions like that, a good place to ask are Stack Overflow. Sometimes we jump on to Stack Overflow, but the quicker way is going to the Discord. There's a Discord for AudioKit, and there's also an AudioKit channel on the Audio Programmers Discord. So I live on those places. So if you ask, then I think somebody was asking about creating an AudioKit node the other day. I saw it on the Audio Programmers Discord, and so then I pinged Taylor, and he came, and he and Ari helped them out. So that's a good place to get that info.
So for people that may not be aware, direct disk streaming is for when you have huge sample libraries like contact libraries, for example. It's too much to load into RAM at once. So it's a way that you're able to actually stream the samples directly from disk rather than needing to load it into RAM. And RA says there was a direct disk streaming in AudioKit 4, but he took it out because the code had a lot of issues. So And somebody had asked if Juice has that. Juice does not have that. But there is a sampler there's an open source sampler called Highs that's built with Juice, and that does have direct disk streaming, but it is a tricky problem, and that's why there are only a few multi-sample engines that are out there, like Contact, UVI Falcon, and a few others, and that's it. Cool. So that's really it. So thank you so much, Nick, aka Moby Pixel, and he has a lot of really cool videos. So make sure you check out his YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Moby Pixel, MOBYPIXL, and I linked it up in the chat earlier in the discussion. Thanks so much. That was very educational.
Thank you.
And with that, that's about it. So just a few really quick announcements. So once again, thank you to our sponsors, Focusrite and Sonux, for sponsoring the Audio Programming Meetup. Our next meetup is on the 8th of November. So it's every second Tuesday of the month. And also another thing, before I mention that other thing, I wanted to say, make sure you join our Discord. So we have discussions about C++, discussions about AudioKit, discussions about Max MSP. It's a great place if you're looking to connect with other people that are into audio programming and really into just learning and helping each other. It's a great place to go. You can join us on the audioprogrammer.com/community. And then we also have the wiki. Once again, if you're looking to share knowledge, tips, and or looking to digest some, you can check us out on wiki.theaudioprogrammer.com. And also, hot off the press, I got a message as we were doing the meetup from Rachel Locke, who's normally our co-host for the show, and she actually has a new episode of DSP Corner where she teaches DSP fundamentals. So be on the lookout for that. That's coming out in the next couple days, and that's really it. Yeah. So thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to the AudioKit team who's also active on the chat. Thank you, Prashant and Nick, for presenting. Awesome meetup. Any other remarks before we sign off from anybody?
No, I mean, thanks for having us. This was awesome. I've been going up this learning curve this year, and it's been so much fun to learn the stuff and then sort of pay it forward, showing other people what I'm learning. And yeah, it's just an awesome community. I don't know if people who have been in the audio space for a long time might be numb to it or something, but I just feel like, yeah, it's been a very inclusive space, and that's not how I necessarily felt with other development in the past. So you guys rock. That's
awesome. And girls and non-binary members as well. Yeah. So we're inclusive in this community towards everybody who wants to get into audio programming. But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. I need that wallpaper, by the way, Nick. That is really awesome wallpaper. I love it.
I made that. I'm a cheap person, so I make my own stuff. That's if the audio app stuff doesn't work out, then
wallpaper.
Yeah, that's it.
We all got to have a plan B. Great. Thank you very much. And with that, I will go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everybody, and see you all on the Discord or on November 8th right here on YouTube. Speak soon, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Cool. And we